J.K. Rowling called it Wizard Chess. Russians called it Tuesday. Believe it or not, Russia wasn't always a chess nation. The great players were Italian, French, Spanish. One nobleman from St. Petersburg decided to change that. This is the story of Petrov's Defense. But before the name story, how the opening itself looks on the board. White starts with e4 and black responds with e5. White does the very common move knight to f3 and black immediately counterattacks with knight to f6. What is the idea here? The Petrov says, I'll threaten what you have instead of I'll protect what I have. Symmetrical, patient, built to last. An opening where black says, I'm not afraid of you. So, what's the story behind the name? 2 centuries ago, the chess world was entirely Western European. No Russian had written a word of chess theory. No Russian player was known beyond their own borders. And then a 30-year-old nobleman named Alexander Petrov published the first chess handbook ever written in Russian. He didn't invent the move at its center. An Italian had noted it 3 centuries earlier. But Petrov understood what the Italian had missed, the exact sequence that made it sound. He published that understanding in Russian. For the first time, chess in Russia was never the same again. Every opening has a story. Subscribe for a new story every Tuesday and Saturday. To understand what Petrov did, you need to know the Russia he was born into. Russian noblemen spoke French to each other and Russian only to their servants. Chess existed in the salons of St. Petersburg, but those salons heard more French than Russian spoken at the time. Writing a chess book in Russian was itself a quiet act of defiance. Noblemen barely used the language. And while Petrov was studying openings, his fellow noblemen were gambling, dueling, and, in an irony worth noting, sometimes playing chess with serfs as the human pieces on their estate lawns. That was the world he came from. Petrov published a chess problem he called The Retreat of Napoleon I from Moscow. The Black King was Napoleon. The White forces were Russia. The solution forced the Black King on a retreating march across the entire board. Checkmate in 14 moves. Moscow was one corner of the board. Paris was the other. 12 years after the actual retreat, Petrov had recreated Russia's greatest military victory as a chess puzzle. If you're enjoying this, a like helps, more people find it. The opening Petrov championed has never agreed on its own name. In the West, Petrov's Defense, named after the man. In Russia and Eastern Europe, the Russian game or even Russian Defense, named after the country. In older books and some databases today, even Petrov's Defense, a spelling variant that never quite disappeared. 3 to 4 names, one opening, no consensus, even now. The Russian renaming tells a story of its own. Petrov was a nobleman, a figure of Tsarist Russia, the world of estates and serfs. When chess became a Soviet project, a vehicle for national pride, naming an opening after an aristocrat was less useful than naming it after the nation. The man was quietly replaced by the country he helped put on the chess map. And that division, Russian game in the East, Petrov's Defense in the West, persists to this day. So who actually plays this opening? The Petrov belongs to a specific kind of player, not the attacker, the fortress builder, the player who understands that not losing in itself is a form of winning. Karpov used it, Kramnik used it, Anand used it. Then Caruana took it to the 2018 World Championship against Magnus Carlsen. Every time Carlsen opened with e4, Caruana answered with a Petrov. Carlsen tried it repeatedly. He could not break through once. Commentators called it boring. Caruana didn't move. Before the match, a video from Caruana's preparation was accidentally leaked, confirming the Petrov was his weapon against e4. Carlsen's team knew exactly what was coming. It didn't matter. That was the only time in World Championship history that every classical game was drawn. Fast forward to last week. the 2026 candidates tournament in Cyprus. Matthias Bluebaum had been the one player Sindarov couldn't break in first 6 rounds. The young Uzbek had 5 wins in 6 rounds, unstoppable. But in round 2, when he had white against Bluebaum, he couldn't get through. Bluebaum played the Petrov, draw. Caruana watched. He had white against Bluebaum in round 5 and guessed he'd see the same thing again. His reasoning afterwards, I didn't see why he'd change his approach. It's a kind of unbreakable opening. So Caruana spent the rest day preparing a sideline. Bluebaum admitted afterwards he didn't know the line. The game ended in checkmate, one of the rarest outcomes at this level of chess. The opening Petrov published in 1824 held against a player in the form of his life, and was cracked by the opening specialist Caruana the very same week. In chess, being predictable has a price. The reason people still play it is simple. There is no reliable way to break it. It takes a specific preparation, and even then, you need to be Caruana. A nobleman from St Petersburg published it in Russian in 1824, in a country that barely existed on the chess map. 200 years later, it held at a world championship. Still drawing, still standing, still unmoved. That's the name story of Petrov's defense. More stories behind chess twice a week.